Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another lecture on supply chain modeling. We were on module 1, that is Introduction to Supply Chain Management and Supply Chain Strategy. In the first lecture, we discussed some basic terminology related to supply chain management. In lecture 1-2, we will discuss supply chain strategy and how it is impacted by business strategy. So learning objectives of this lecture include to understand how to scan external and internal business environments in order to formulate corporate and business strategies. What are 5 generic business strategies and how they differ from each other? How business strategy impacts supply chain strategy? 6 components of a supply chain strategy and segmentation of a supply chain based on supply and demand uncertainty and its impact on supply chain strategy. So this lecture is further divided into 3 parts, part A, B and C. And in part A, we will discuss what is a business strategy and how it is formulated. Before planners begin to develop a supply chain strategy, they must first define the strategy that will be used to run the business. So the business strategy defines what the company is today, what it wants to, where it wants to go, and what will it take to get there. So it sets the direction for the business to reach from its current position to a higher position. So this is very important to formulate a business strategy that is realistic and correctly address the current situation of the market. The output of this process is the mission statement and the business goals that provide a single, consistent, and coherent direction, guiding and coordinating the company's activities. So it has a very important role to play. In order to make a business strategy, it is important to understand the external environment as well as internal environment. So external environment means the situation of the marketplace that keeps on changing. And in internal environment means internal functions of the organization, the products and services it is making, the core competencies, the strength and weaknesses of the organization, etc. And business strategy, we will see that further guides the tactics and operations of the business. So the purpose of external and internal business scanning is to assess the enterprise's existing competitive strengths and weaknesses, to understand where we are right now. And knowledge of the enterprise's external and internal environment is the prelude to the development of the corporate business strategy, which in turn will drive the development of the supply chain strategy. So this knowledge of marketplace as well as internal environment is important for the development of corporate strategy that helps in developing business strategy, and finally the functional strategies including the supply chain strategy. So we can scan or understand or analyze the external business environment in different ways. There are different models available. So one of them is Porter's 5 forces model. So it uses outside in approach. So it helps to set the directions for our business. So the idea is that the market structure influences the strategic behavior of organization. So the organizational success is indirectly dependent on the market structure. So there are 5 elements of the external environment that are discussed in Porter's 5 forces model. First is internal rivalry among existing competitors. Second is threat of new entrants. The third is ease of substitution. Fourth is relative power of suppliers. And fifth is relative power of customers. So rivalry among existing competitors. Competition or rivalry among existing competitors is stronger when the demand is growing slowly or declining. So there is more supply than the demand. Brand switching is not costly. The customer can easily switch from one supplier, say, to the other supplier. So in that case, the competition will be strong. Competitors' products are not very distinct from each other. So all competitors are providing kind of similar product. So there is a lot of choice that the customer has in this case. So competition will be strong. There is excess supply or unused capacity, and fixed and or storage costs are high. So again, here you can see that excess supply or unused capacity and demand is less. So competition will be strong. There are more competitors of equivalent size and capability. So number of competitors are more. So there are more people who can provide the same solution, same service, same product. So customer again has the choice. Competition will be strong. Rivals have diverse strategies, including globalization. So not only different products or not only there are different manufacturers or service providers who are available, but they have different strategies to reach the customer as well. The customer is at ease, again has options to choose, so competition will be strong. Another reason is that it is harder to leave the industry because there are barriers to exist. There are barriers to exit. That may be legal barriers to exit, contractual or emotional barriers. So it is not possible to easily abandon the business, leave the business because of different government regulation, some contracts that the organization is tied up with, or maybe the business is some sort of some sort of family business that that has been inherited actually to the current generation by the previous one. So there is some emotional attachment with the business. There is some pride in doing that business. So these could be the reasons that could make it difficult to leave the industry. And rivalry is weakened when we sort of see opposite of these things, these factors. So you can just go through them and to get an idea of when the rivalry will be weak. The second factor is threat of new entrants. So the threat of entry is greater. There is a higher probability, there are more chances that new organizations can enter the business when, for example, industry is growing and new entrant can recoup investment in the entry process over time. So there is more business that is expected to be offered. So supply is sort of less, demand is more. So it is the time when new entrants can enter the business. Regulation is lax. It is easy to start the business. Rules and regulation, for example, government regulations are not strict, or actually there are some waivers, or there is some relief provided by such bodies for that business. So that is the time actually when new organizations can start the business. New technologies emerge that can overcome the advantage of incumbents. So there are people or organizations who have been doing that business for a longer time, but now new technologies are making that business, for example, easier to perform, better processes can be developed because of new technology. So it becomes difficult for the older organization sometime to switch to new technology. But it is the time for new organization to enter the business because it is easier for them to adopt the new technology as well as start the business. Another reason could be products are not strongly distinguished from each other, as we saw in the previous factor. So there is little customer loyalty to specific brands in this case. So if they find a new entrant who can offer something better than the previous suppliers of that product or service. So there are high chances to uh, for those customers to switch to the new supplier. So in that case, new entrants can actually look for that business to start. The third factor is ease of substitution. Organizations' competitors are not just those organizations that offer similar products or services, but competitors are every organization that meets the same customer need by using, for example, slightly different product or service. Now, for example, uh, for photography, we need DSLR camera. So organization is, for example, manufacturing this type of camera, but its competitors are not those organizations that are only making DSLR camera, but also the organizations that make regular digital camera, and even the organization that are making smartphones, because smartphones nowadays have cameras with good quality. So they may also be the competitors for this DSLR camera manufacturing organization. And even if there are any traditional film camera manufacturing organization, they are also the competitors for this DSLR camera manufacturing organization. So if you see in the case of service, so in the case of service organization, we see that, for example, a group of travelers uses airplanes to travel in general. But they do have the option actually, for example, to use the trains or good road transport service. So the competitors for some air travel company may not be other air travel companies, but also, for example, the road transport system as well as the rail system. So you can think of similar other examples as well, that one need of the customer can be fulfilled by not a specific product, but more than one product. And from the point of view of a business, all such organizations that are making such products are providing similar service are its competitors. So easier it is for the customer to find a substitute product or service, the tougher will be the competition. And the difficult it is for the customer to find a substitute product and service, the lesser will be the competition. Fourth and fifth factors will be discussed together, that is relative power of buyers and suppliers. So we will discuss relative power of suppliers when it is high, and you can think of just opposite to understand when will be the uh, bargaining power of buyers be high. So demand of suppliers products is high and supply is low. So in that case, if demand for the product that the supplier is providing which is high and supply in the market is low, then in that case, supplier will have high bargaining power. And in the case of buyer, of course, buyer's demand is weak but supply is high. In that case, they will have greater bargaining power. So there are different suppliers available, so buyer can choose between them. A supplier adds some value to its product that is attractive to producer and thereby makes the product less of a commodity. So a supplier has some operation or technology that adds value that is actually required by the customer. So in that case, that supplier has stronger power. It has some unique process that is actually required by the customer. So supplier will have high bargaining power. The cost of switching to another supplier are high. For some reason, it is not possible for the customer to switch to another supplier. Again, the term supplier and customers that we are using in this segment could apply to both, B2C or B2B. So you have to be careful uh, in which scenario actually B2B uh, business is more applicable in our discussion. In some time B2C, and in many cases actually both are true. There are only a few suppliers and they can dominate their market. So again, There is sort of monopoly. Only few people can provide that product or service, so their bargaining power is more. And opposite also true. There are if only a few are powerful buyers, then in that case, the bargaining power of buyers will be high. The supplier's customer cannot make the product itself, so customer is highly dependent on that supplier because of say copyright or patent, or it doesn't have at least the capability to make the product itself or outsource it to some other supplier. The supplier provides only a small portion of the products of the producer's components. Consequently, an increase in price will have only a small effect. It will probably cost more to switch suppliers. So if there is a small quantity being supplied by the supplier, so for the customer's point of view, it is very hard to switch from one supplier to the next because of small quantity. Rather, it will prefer to let the supplier increase the cost instead of switching to other supplier because it may cost even more. There are few acceptable substitutes, as we saw in the previous slide, that the product that is being made by the supplier is the only option to fulfill certain needs. So there is no alternate product available. So in that case, suppliers will have high bargaining power. And finally, the customer represents only a small part of the supplier sales. The supplier can afford to lose the customer. So supplier is providing the same product to many customers, as we saw in the first lecture, that in a supply chain, a supplier could be supplying to different organizations. So if this certain customer has uh, is being supplied with a very small quantity, so supplier can easily, for example, abandon supplying to that customer because it will not impact its business. So it can use its bargaining power in this case to increase the prices, for example. So you can see the factors mentioned here, and most of them are just opposite to the ones that we saw. So using Porter's five forces model, a business or an organization can actually evaluate itself and see where it lies in the market. So the ideal scenario is that there is very little competitive pressure, like rivalry is very weak or moderate, barrier to new entrants is high, so it is not easy to enter the business. Competition from substitutes is low. No substitute products or services are available. Suppliers' power is weak. Same is about buyers' power. So this organization is enjoying a very favorable situation where competitive pressure is low and profitability potential is high. So it is lying somewhere over here. On the other extreme, somewhere over here, where cumulative competitive pressure is high, so profitability potential is low. So organization may be somewhere over here, and if it cannot bear this pressure or cannot keep its profit to some level, it may be forced to leave the business. So in this case, rivalry is strong among the competitors. New entrants can easily enter the business. Competition from substitutes is intense. Supplier power is considerable for this organization. Same is about buyer power. So that is also very high. But practically most of the organization actually lie on a continuum on this line. So they keep on moving in these directions. It is very rare that an organization has a fixed position in this on this line, for example. So this is the ideal situation, but it is very rare that some organization stays forever at this position. And same is true about this position, that it is very rare that organization forever remains at this position. So generally they keep on moving up and down on this continuum. And this is again the ideal situation. This is perhaps the worst we can say. So using Porter's model, organization can visualize where it currently lies on this continuum and set goal for itself where it wants to move. Of course, it would like to move in the higher direction, and how actually it can move in that direction. So I hope Porter's five forces model was clear. In the next segment, we will briefly discuss how an organization can scan its internal business environment. Thank you very much.